My stepfather hit me because I refused to co-sign his loans. And when I turned to my mom for comfort, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't act like you're the victim here. Stay with me while I share what really happened. And if my story connects with you, don't forget to show some love by subscribing, liking, and sharing with the people you care about." My name is Keisha Lattimore. I'm 22 years old, and I've been fighting my whole life to build something better for myself. I'm a nursing student, the kind of person who believes in working hard and standing on my own 2 feet. But before I got here, life at home was a battlefield I never asked for. When I was 11, my mom remarried. His name was Maurice Benton. At first, he seemed charming. He had a smile that made people think he was a good man, the kind who would take care of a family. My mom, Loretta, believed he was everything she'd been waiting for. I tried to believe that too. I wanted so badly for him to be the kind of stepfather who would cheer for me at school events, who would encourage me when I was struggling. But Maurice never looked at me like I was his daughter. He looked at me like I was a tool, something he could use. He'd make little comments, telling me how I should think about my future, but not in a supportive way, always in a way that served him. He wanted me to grow up fast and be useful. I still remember the way he would step in between me and my mom when we argued. He always made sure to turn things around, so I looked like the problem. And my mom, she always defended him. No matter what he did, she had an excuse ready. "He didn't mean it, Keisha," she'd say. Or, "You're being too sensitive." After a while, I stopped expecting her to take my side. By the time I turned 18, Maurice started showing his real face even more. He began talking about money all the time, loans, credit, business deals. He wasn't asking me for advice, though. He wanted me to sign papers for him. He kept saying, "Your family. Family helps each other." But I knew better. I knew his kind of help meant I'd be stuck with his debts for the rest of my life. The more I said no, the angrier he became. My mom didn't stand by me. She called me stingy and ungrateful, like I was betraying them by protecting my future. I felt so trapped, like the people who were supposed to care about me most had turned into strangers. That was just the beginning. I had no idea how far things would go, or how much it would hurt when the people I loved most showed me who they really were. From the moment I could remember, Maurice never treated me like his daughter. To him, I was just someone he could use whenever he needed a favor or someone to cover for his mistakes. He never cheered for me at school, never asked how my day was. He only wanted things from me, and he made it very clear that my value to him was in what I could do for him. My mom, Loretta, made it even harder. No matter what Maurice said or did, she always had his back. If he belittled me or tried to make me feel small, she would brush it off or even agree with him. "Keisha, you're overreacting," she would say, or, "He's just trying to teach you responsibility." I started to feel invisible, like my feelings didn't matter at all. It was as if my mom had chosen him over me, and that realization cut deeper than anything Maurice ever said. The tension reached a boiling point around my 18th birthday. Instead of celebrating the milestone in a normal way, Maurice decided it was the perfect time to pressure me into co-signing loans for him. He tried to make it sound reasonable, saying it was for a business opportunity or investment that would benefit the family. But I knew him too well by then. His ideas were reckless, and he had no plan to pay anything back. I understood all too clearly what would happen if I agreed. I would be stuck responsible for his mistakes. I told him no, firmly and without hesitation. I explained that I couldn't sign anything that would risk my future. I expected some pushback, maybe some anger, but nothing prepared me for what came next. Instead of acknowledging my reasoning, my mom turned on me. Loretta accused me of being stingy and ungrateful, making me feel guilty for refusing to enable her husband's irresponsibility. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The person who was supposed to protect me, who was supposed to love me unconditionally, was standing with the man who was using me. That night, I felt a mix of frustration, sadness, and betrayal. It wasn't just that Maurice wanted me to take on his debt. It was that my own mother had chosen him over me. I realized then that I couldn't rely on them for support or guidance. I had to start thinking about my own safety, my own future, and how to protect myself from the people who were supposed to care about me the most. It was a painful lesson, but it was also a turning point. I began to see the truth behind the charm, the red flags that had been there all along. I understood that standing up for myself was no longer optional. It was necessary. That moment marked the beginning of me taking control of my life, even if it meant facing the people who were supposed to love me. One evening, the tension at home reached its peak. Maurice had been pressing me all week about co-signing a loan for a business opportunity he claimed was going to change everything. I had refused every time, but that night he cornered me in the living room, his eyes flashing with impatience and anger. The moment I tried to leave the room, he blocked my way, towering over me as if my refusal was some kind of personal attack against him. He leaned in close, voice low but sharp, repeating his demand. Sign the $20,000 loan. Keisha, you're part of this family. You're supposed to help, he said, trying to guilt me, trying to make me feel like I owed him. I shook my head, refusing to give in. My voice was steady, though my heart was pounding. No, Maurice. I'm not signing anything. I won't take responsibility for your mistakes. That only made him angrier. Suddenly, without any warning, he slapped me across the face. The sound echoed in the room, sharp and terrifying. I stumbled back, shocked, more from the fact that he had crossed a line I never thought he would than from the physical pain. My cheek burned, my mind raced, and I felt a cold, sinking realization that the man I had been forced to call stepfather had no boundaries when it came to controlling me. Before I could gather myself, my mom walked in. I thought she would step between us, that she would protect me, but what she did instead made everything worse. Loretta's eyes met mine, and she didn't see a hurt daughter. She saw a problem she couldn't fix. Don't act like you're the victim here. You pushed him, she said, her words striking me like another slap. I froze. The betrayal hit harder than Maurice's hand ever could. Here was my mother, the person I had hoped would protect me no matter what, standing behind him, telling me that I was somehow at fault. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was wrong, that he was the one who lost control, but the words wouldn't come out. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of comfort or safety, I felt alone, trapped between a man who hurt me and a mother who chose to defend him. The room felt suffocating. Every word, every look between them made it clear. My refusal to go along with Maurice's reckless plans had made me the enemy. The person who was supposed to nurture and guide me had turned her back, leaving me to face the consequences alone. I realized in that moment that staying there wasn't just painful, it was dangerous. I spent the rest of that night sitting quietly, trying to process everything. I could feel the anger simmering inside me, but more than that, there was clarity. I understood that I could no longer depend on my mom or Maurice for anything. I had to find my own strength, my own way to stand tall. That night marked the beginning of a choice. Either remain a victim in that house, or take the first steps toward protecting myself and my future. The shock from that night didn't fade. It only settled deeper into my chest. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring at the wall, my cheeks still stinging from Maurice's slap. Every word my mom had said replayed in my mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. The person who was supposed to love me unconditionally, who was supposed to protect me, had not only failed but sided with the man who hurt me. My home, the place I had always thought of as safe, suddenly felt suffocating, like a cage I couldn't escape. I realized then, with a clarity that was both terrifying and liberating, that I couldn't stay there anymore. Staying would mean accepting their betrayal, pretending that their choices didn't hurt me, and I couldn't do that. I grabbed a bag, hurriedly tossing in clothes, my school books, and anything else I could carry. Every movement was fueled by a mix of fear, anger, and determination. I didn't know what awaited me outside that door, but I knew it had to be better than what I was living with. I called Chandra Ellis, my closest friend, and she didn't hesitate. Within minutes, she was at my door, helping me load my things into her car. Her presence was a relief I hadn't realized I desperately needed. She didn't ask questions or judge. She simply opened her home and her arms to me, and for the first time that night, I felt a small flicker of safety. Once I was inside Chandra's apartment, I sank onto her couch and just let myself fall apart. The tears I had been holding back all day finally came, streaming down my face as I recounted, in broken pieces, what had happened. Chandra sat beside me, holding me, letting me cry, whispering that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve any of it. Her words were gentle, comforting, and yet they carried a weight of truth I had needed to hear. I was not to blame, and I didn't have to stay where I wasn't valued. As the night wore on, I cried not just for the slap, but for everything it represented. The years of feeling invisible, the countless times my mom chose Maurice over me, and the hollow reality of what family could sometimes be. I thought about the life I had envisioned for myself, and I realized that if I wanted even a chance at freedom and happiness, I had to cut the ties that bound me to their toxicity, at least for now. By the time I finally stopped crying, Exhaustion had taken over, but with it came a resolve I hadn't felt before. I swore to myself that I would never forget what they had done, and more importantly, I would never forgive them for that night. Their betrayal had shown me exactly who they were, and I promised that I would build my life on my own terms, without their approval, without their interference, and without ever letting their actions define my worth. That night marked the start of my journey, the first step toward taking control of my life and reclaiming the power they had tried to steal from me. Life on my own was harder than I had ever imagined. The first few weeks were a blur of moving in, unpacking, and figuring out how to survive without anyone to rely on. I quickly realized that independence came with a price. I had 2 part-time jobs just to cover rent, groceries, and my school expenses. Every morning I woke up before sunrise to prepare for my shifts, and every night I came home completely drained, only to force myself to study for nursing classes that felt endless. There were days when my body screamed for rest and my mind begged for a break, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let myself fail, not after everything I had been through. Loneliness settled in like a constant shadow. I missed having someone around who could understand what I was going through, who could celebrate small victories with me or offer comfort during low moments. Chandra became more than a friend. She became my family. When I cried over the smallest frustrations or complained about how tired I was, she listened patiently, never judging, never offering pity, just support. She reminded me of the bigger picture when I lost hope. One evening, after I had complained about feeling exhausted and unappreciated, she looked me in the eye and said, "Keisha, your success will be the revenge they'll regret for the rest of their lives." Her words stuck with me, fueling my determination even on the toughest days. Every shift at work tested my limits. I learned to handle difficult patients, long hours, and the pressure of making split-second decisions in a hospital environment. Studying nursing was relentless, but I slowly started seeing progress. Each assignment I completed, each exam I passed, became a small victory that reminded me I was building something no one could take away from me. The exhaustion never fully went away, but neither did the pride I felt for persevering despite everything stacked against me. The turning point came on the day of my graduation. Wearing my cap and gown, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I had managed to keep myself afloat financially, emotionally, and academically. Against all odds, I had succeeded. Graduating with honors wasn't just a personal victory. It was proof that I could thrive without the people who had tried to hold me back. I thought about my mom and Maurice, about their choices, about the way they had underestimated me, and for the first time, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Soon after graduation, I landed my first full-time position as a trauma nurse. It was everything I had worked for, long hours, high stakes, and immense responsibility, but I embraced it fully. Every patient I helped, every life I touched, reminded me of my strength, my resilience, and my independence. I was finally building a life that was completely my own, a life that no one could control or diminish. And in that quiet, satisfying way, I realized that Chandra had been right. My success wasn't just survival. It was the kind of victory that would leave them wishing they had never doubted me. Maurice always talked a big game about his business ventures. He acted like he had everything under control, like he was some kind of mastermind who could turn any idea into money. But behind the smiles and the confident talk, it was all smoke and mirrors. I had known for years that his plans were reckless, that he spent more than he earned, and that he relied on other people to cover his mistakes. Now, watching from a distance, I could see it all come crashing down. One by one, his so-called opportunities failed. Deals that promised quick returns collapsed. Investments he claimed were guaranteed left him empty-handed. His creditors began calling more often, demanding payments he couldn't make. The people who once nodded politely at his stories started avoiding him, whispering doubts about his credibility behind his back. Maurice, who had always acted untouchable, now looked desperate and disheveled in the eyes of everyone who mattered. Rumors of his failures reached our extended family. Whispers about his debts, missed payments, and questionable business practices spread like wildfire. His reputation, built on charm and confidence, crumbled almost overnight. Where he had once seemed fearless and commanding, now he appeared defeated and anxious, constantly checking his phone, pacing, and muttering about what to do next. I could almost hear the walls of his life closing in. Then came the calls. At first, I ignored them, letting them go to voicemail. But eventually, he left a message that made my blood boil. Maurice was begging for help. He wanted me to co-sign loans, to cover payments, to fix the mess he had made. I listened silently as he tried to twist words and guilt me into saving him from the very consequences he had caused. He spoke like nothing had ever happened between us, like the years of manipulation, control, and even the night he hit me never existed. For a moment, I just stared at the phone, my fingers tightening around it. I could feel the anger rise, mixed with a strange sense of satisfaction. This was the man who had terrorized me, who had used my mom's loyalty as a shield to intimidate me, now reduced to begging. I didn't even hesitate. I remembered the slap, the fear, the betrayal, the way my mother had chosen him over me. That night of pain came rushing back, vivid and unrelenting. I pressed the hang-up button. Just like that, I cut the call. No words, no lectures, no explanations. I didn't need to argue or justify myself. Maurice's collapse was the result of his own choices, his own recklessness, and I had no obligation to rescue him. In that moment, I felt a quiet power, a relief I hadn't expected. He had created his own downfall, and now I was free from the burden of his problems. I could watch from afar as he faced the consequences he had ignored for so long, and I knew, with a calm certainty, that this was justice in its purest form. A few days after Maurice's desperate calls, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen and saw my mom's name. For a moment, I hesitated, my chest tightening. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part that still remembered all the years of love I had once felt for her, made me answer. "Keisha, please." Her voice trembled on the other end, almost unrecognizable. It was shaky, pleading, the kind of voice I hadn't heard in years. I need you to help us. The bills, the house, everything, we can't manage without you." She sounded desperate, and for a split second, I felt the old instinct to care tug at me. But the memories were too strong to ignore. I remembered Maurice's hand on my face, the burning sting, and most of all, my mother's words as she watched it happen. "Don't act like you're the victim here. You pushed him." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "The day you watched him hit me and defended him, you lost me. That wasn't just a moment, that was a choice. And that choice told me everything I need to know about where I stand in this family." I heard her gasp on the other end, the sound heavy with shock and guilt. Her tears started to fall, audible even over the phone, and I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, pity. But it wasn't for her. I felt no warmth, no relief, no softening. All I felt was resolve. I had spent too long trying to protect myself emotionally from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I had survived her betrayal, and I had grown stronger because of it. She sobbed, pleading again. "Keisha, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please help us. I can't do this without you." I listened quietly, letting the words wash over me without letting them reach my heart. I didn't need her apologies, and I didn't need to explain why I couldn't help. The line was heavy with silence, and then I finally spoke again, softly but unmistakably. "I've made my choice, Mom. I can't give you what you want. You made it clear who you care about when it mattered most. That's not my burden to fix." Her cries continued, but I had already made up my mind. I hung up, letting the call end with the sound of her sorrow echoing in my ears. It was a strange mix of emotions, relief, closure, and a quiet satisfaction. For years, I had allowed myself to be hurt by their choices, but now, I felt untouchable. In that moment, I realized something important. Forgiveness was not mine to give, and love was not a requirement. My mother had made her choice, and I had made mine. I didn't need her approval, her validation, or her gratitude. I only needed to keep moving forward, building my life on my own terms, and letting the consequences of her decisions be hers to face. That call was the final confirmation. I was free, resolute, and no longer her child to manipulate. For months, relatives had been asking me why I refused to step in and help my mom and Maurice. Family gatherings were filled with whispered questions and pointed glances, everyone wondering why I stayed distant, why I didn't answer calls, why I seemed so cold. Some people assumed I was being stubborn, others thought I was ungrateful. I had stayed quiet for a long time, watching the rumors swirl, feeling the weight of judgment without saying a word. But I couldn't stay silent forever. Finally, I decided it was time to set the record straight. I called a family meeting, not to argue or beg for understanding, but to tell the truth, the real truth. As everyone settled into the living room, curious and tense, I began to speak, my voice steady, though my hands trembled slightly. I told them about Maurice, how he had never acted like a father, how he had only ever seen me as someone useful, someone to manipulate and pressure. I described the relentless demands, the lies, and the way he tried to make me responsible for his reckless decisions. Then I told them about the night that changed everything. I described the confrontation when he cornered me for the $20,000 loan, how he had slapped me, and most importantly, what my mom did. I repeated her words exactly as they were spoken. Don't act like you're the victim here. You pushed him. I told them how those words had shattered me, how I had felt betrayed by the very person who was supposed to protect me, and how that moment had made me realize I could no longer trust them. The room grew silent. I could feel the shock ripple through the family, the way their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief. Whispers broke out, questions spilling over each other, but I continued unwavering. I told them how I had worked hard to survive on my own, how I had built my life without their help, and how every time my mom had defended Maurice over me, it had hurt me deeply. I didn't shy away from the facts. I wanted them to understand why I had drawn my boundaries and why I would not be manipulated or guilt into helping someone who had caused me harm. I watched as faces changed, as some relatives struggled to reconcile the mother and stepfather they thought they knew with the truth I was revealing. I saw eyes widen at my mom's betrayal and a mixture of pity and anger directed at Maurice for what he had done. By the time I finished speaking, there was a heavy silence. The truth had been laid bare, and it left no room for misinterpretation. In that moment, Loretta and Maurice were left isolated. They could no longer hide behind appearances, no longer manipulate narratives to make themselves look innocent. I had spoken my truth, and it stood firm. The family could no longer pressure me or question my choices because they knew exactly why I had acted the way I had. It was not stubbornness, not ingratitude, it was self-preservation and justice. For the first time in years, I felt completely seen and validated, not by my mother, but by the truth itself, which had finally freed me from the weight of their lies and the expectations of everyone around them. Maurice's downfall was swift and complete. His so-called business ventures collapsed one after another, leaving him drowning in debt. Creditors hounded him day and night, demanding payments he couldn't make. The house he had once boasted about owning became a source of constant stress, each missed payment a reminder of his failures. His car, the one he flaunted at family events, was repossessed after he couldn't keep up with the loan. People who once nodded politely at his stories now avoided him entirely, and those who had trusted him financially turned their backs, leaving him with nothing but the weight of his own recklessness. Loretta, who had always carried herself with a sense of pride and superiority, now faced a harsh reality. The grand home she had enjoyed and the comfort she had taken for granted were gone. She was forced to move into a cramped, modest apartment with Maurice, a stark contrast to the life she had flaunted. The space was tight, the walls thin, and every day was a reminder that the choices she had made, choosing Maurice over her daughter, siding with him over truth and love, had consequences. Her pride, once unshakable, now bowed under the pressure of reality. Meanwhile, I was building a life that was entirely my own. Every late night at work, every moment I spent studying, every sacrifice I had made while juggling 2 jobs had paid off. I had finally purchased my own condo, a place that belonged only to me. Walking through the front door, turning the key, and knowing that no one had the power to control or threaten me in that space filled me with an indescribable sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of independence fully, and it was exhilarating. The contrast between my life and theirs was undeniable. Maurice was consumed by his failures, frantic and desperate, while I thrived on the results of my hard work and perseverance. Loretta, who had once lectured me on being ungrateful and selfish, now had to live in close quarters with the man whose actions she had excused and defended. Their days were filled with tension, worry, and the constant reminder that the world did not bend to their whims. I never gloated, never needed to, because the truth of our situation spoke for itself. Karma had a way of balancing the scales, and it was unfolding before my eyes. The independence I had fought so hard to achieve became a testament to the life I had created, free from manipulation, abuse, and betrayal. From my condo, I could see clearly that the world had shifted. I was free, empowered, and untouchable, while Maurice and Loretta faced the consequences of their choices. Their comfort was gone, replaced by struggle, tension, and regret. And in that, I found a quiet satisfaction. My life, built on my own terms, was the ultimate reflection of resilience and justice, a stark reminder that the way we treat others eventually comes back to us. Years later, I was running errands at a local grocery store. My mind focused on the list of things I needed to pick up for the week. Life had grown into a rhythm I had built for myself, steady, independent, and completely my own. The condo I had purchased was a sanctuary, a space where I could live without fear, without judgment, without anyone's manipulation. I moved through the aisles confident and calm when something, or rather, someone caught my eye. It was my mother, Loretta. She looked completely different from the woman I had known. The once prideful, commanding presence was gone, replaced by someone worn down, aged beyond her years. Lines of stress etched deep into her face, her posture slightly slumped, and her eyes carrying a mixture of surprise and something like regret. She didn't expect to see me, not here, not now. I watched her hesitate, unsure whether to approach me or retreat. Part of me wanted to look away, to avoid the awkwardness, but another part, calm, deliberate, unwavering, held me steady. I remembered everything. The slap, the betrayal, the endless years of being undervalued, dismissed, and blamed. I remembered every time she had chosen Maurice over me, every word that had left me feeling invisible. And in that memory, I found a strange sense of peace. She finally stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Keisha," she began, as if her single word could erase years of hurt and mistakes. I didn't stop, didn't even flinch. I could hear her start to say more, a plea, an apology, perhaps even an explanation, but I already knew what I needed to do. I walked past her slowly, each step deliberate, calm, steady. The silence between us was powerful. She opened her mouth again, and I ignored it. I didn't turn, didn't hesitate, didn't allow her words or presence to shake the control I had over my life. My calmness, my composure, my independence, these were my victories. They were the unspoken truth of everything she and Maurice had tried to take from me, but never could. As I moved through the store, her figure behind me grew smaller, her calls fading into nothing. I felt no anger, no bitterness, only a quiet, unshakable sense of strength. The walk past her wasn't just about ignoring her. It was a statement. I had survived, I had thrived, and I had done it entirely on my own terms. I was untouchable, unbothered, and completely free from the weight of their choices. That silence, my refusal to engage, to justify, to forgive, was my final revenge. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't require confrontation or argument. It was simple, powerful, and absolute. I walked away knowing that she could never control me again, never manipulate me, and never diminish the life I had built. My calm, steady walk past her said everything that words ever could, and in that quiet victory, I felt a sense of closure I had been chasing for years. I was free, untouchable, and finally at peace. What would you have done if you were in Keisha's shoes? Walk past your own mother after everything, or try to confront her one last time. Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. And if you love powerful, real-life stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.